Hello, dear students. The topic of 2.2, the three questions. Examination point of view से तो important है ही ये topic, but the topic also gives a very good moralistic lessons. Okay, और एक conclusion नहीं है, ना ही एक moral lesson. There are three moral lessons from the three questions which are being asked by one king. Now, this topic from the examination, definitely you can expect this question in your papers, in your unit tests, in your terminals, everywhere. No problem in it at all. But make sure that you learn this topic, rather you understand this topic from each and every angle. So, जाहिर सी बात है, अगर ये टॉपिक एग्जामिनेशन के लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है, अगर ये टॉपिक ओवरऑल प्रेजेंटेशंस, ओवरऑल अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए भी इंपॉर्टेंट है, तो इस टॉपिक को हम लोग देंगे टोटलिटी ऑफ 5 स्टार्स. हम लोग इस टॉपिक को देंगे अ टोटल ऑफ 5 स्टार्स. Okay, so 5 stars for this topic. Okay, now the three questions. Okay, activity based question. Okay, expressions in English classified under different heads. Pair up with your partner, guess and match the columns, use a dictionary. Okay, fine. So what is the principle? Quotation का मतलब क्या है, morals का मतलब क्या है, idioms का मतलब क्या है, slogans का मतलब क्या है, one liners, maxims and proverbs. आफ्टर द चैप्टर इज ओवर, जब एक बार मेरा एक्सप्लेनेशन हो जाएगा तो हम लोग इसके बारे में जरूर करेंगे. एक्टिविटी क्वेश्चन 1 एंड एक्टिविटी क्वेश्चन नंबर 2. लेट अस सी इफ यू रिमेंबर अ नर्सरी राइम यू मस्ट हैव संग एज अ किड्स. ओके, तो एज अ फन एक्टिविटी ये क्वेश्चन लेंगे, इसको ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंस देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. तो लेट्स गो विद द क्वेश्चन, लेट्स गो विद द टॉपिक. टॉपिक का नाम है 2.2 द थ्री क्वेश्चंस. लियो टॉल्स्टॉय, अ वेरी फेमस रशियन राइटर हु इज रिगार्डेड एज वन ऑफ द ग्रेटेस्ट ऑथर्स ऑफ ऑल टाइम. He first achieved literary acclaim in his 20s with his semi-autobiographical trilogy Childhood, Boyhood and Youth. तो लियो टॉल्स्टॉय ने क्या किया था? लियो टॉल्स्टॉय ने एक सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट ऑटोबायोग्राफिकल ट्रायोलॉजी लिख दी थी on based on childhood, boyhood and youth. A parable is a short story with a moral lesson. A parable usually has human characters. This parable concerns a king who wants to find the answers to what he considers to be the three most important questions in life. तो क्या दिया है पैराबल में? ये दिया है पैराबल इज अ शॉर्ट स्टोरी विद अ मॉरल लेसन. तो पैराबल क्या है? इट्स अ शॉर्ट स्टोरी विद अ मॉरल लेसन. ठीक है, सो ऐसी कुछ शॉर्ट स्टोरी आउट ऑफ द बिग, मतलब जो ओरिजिनल स्टोरी वो बहुत बड़ी है, उसमें से कुछ बेसिक पार्ट दे हैव टेकन, अ बेसिक पार्ट ऑफ अ स्मॉल पार्ट व्हिच इज बीइंग टेकन, but with an extremely big lesson, with an extremely good moral lesson into it, that is called as a parable. A parable usually has human characters. This parable concerns a king who wants to find the answers to what he considers to be the three most important questions of his life. Let's go further. Once a certain king had an idea. If he always knew the right time to begin everything, if he knew who were the right people to listen to, and who to avoid the most important thing to do, he would never fail in anything that he would undertake, and above all, if he always knew what was the most undertake. मतलब ऐसा कहा गया है कि इसमें कहते हैं कि एक किंग कहता है, वन अ किंग हु इज ऑलवेज इन सम आइडिया, मतलब किंग को एक ऐसा थॉट आता है कि मुझे कुछ चंद मेरे क्वेश्चंस के आंसर्स चाहिए, ऐसा कुछ मुझे चाहिए विच विल मेक मी अंडरस्टैंड, रादर आई वांट समवन टू टेल मी विच इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट टाइम, हु द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट पर्सन इज, विच इज द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग टू वैल्यू एट अ सर्टेन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम इन लाइफ. ये सारे क्वेश्चंस के मुझे कुछ आंसर देगा, एंड आई रियली वांट दिस आंसर्स बिकॉज किंग सेज that I am really frustrated, I am confused between this. तो यू नो ये सब मिक्स एंड मैच इसमें मैं अटक गया हूँ, एंड आई रियली वांट दिस आंसर्स टू बी नोन. सो क्या है? if he knew, just a minute, if he knew the right time to begin everything, if he knew who were the right people to listen to, and who to avoid the most important thing to do, he would never fail in anything that he would undertake, and above all, if he always knew what was the most undertake. Since he was convinced that he was right in thinking this way, he had a proclamation made in his kingdom. He would give a great reward to anyone who would teach him what the right time was for every action. Again, who would teach him what the right time was for every action, who the most necessary people were, and how he might know the most important thing to do, and how he might know the most important thing to do. ऐसा लियो टॉल्स्टॉय ने कहा था कि लियो टॉल्स्टॉय राइटर कहता है कि एक किंग को ऐसे सवाल पड़े कि मुझे एक कुछ जानना है कि which was the right time, who were the right people, and most importantly, what was and how he might know the most important thing to do. तो सबसे important काम कौन सा है, सबसे important लोग कौन से है, और सबसे important time कौन सा है, which is the most valuable time. इस सबके आंसर से किंग परेशान थे and he was wanting to find the answers. इसीलिए इस किंग ने क्या किया, इस किंग ने एक प्रोक्लेमेशन दे दिया. प्रोक्लेमेशन मतलब ही अनाउंस्ड इन हिज किंगडम. प्रोक्लेमेशन का मतलब है अनाउंस्ड. ओके, सो प्रोक्लेम इज टू अनाउंस. ही अनाउंस्ड इन हिज किंगडम that I want to know the answers of these questions, and whoever will answer these questions to me, will get a great reward from my side. Now what happened, he called up many learned people to the court, but they all gave different answers. In reply to the first question, some said that to know the right time for every action, one must draw up in advance a table of days, months and years, and must strictly live according to it. Others declared that it was impossible to decide beforehand the right time for every action, but that, not letting oneself be absorbed in idle pastimes, one should always attend to all that was going on and then do what was the most essential part. तो किंग कहते हैं, मतलब ऐसा है, some also declared that beforehand the right time for every action, but not letting oneself be absorbed in idle pastimes. टाइम पास करने में कोई किसी का टाइम नहीं स्पेंड करना चाहिए. तो कुछ भी हो, जो काम हो, छोटा हो बड़ा हो, दैट विल बी द राइट टाइम. और वो करना एंड अंडरस्टैंडिंग द वैल्यू ऑफ दैट टाइम, अंडरस्टैंड द इंपॉर्टेंस ऑफ दैट थिंग टू बी डन एट अ पर्टिकुलर टाइम, उसी को हम लोग कहते हैं द राइट टाइम. Yet others said it was impossible for one man to decide correctly the right time for every action, and that the king should instead have a council of wise people who would help him to fix the proper time for everything. Equally varied were the answers to the second question. Some said the king most needed were his counselors. कुछ ने कहा काउंसलर, जो उनके सलाहकार है, जो उनके कुछ चंद ऐसे टॉपिक्स के ऊपर एज अ किंग को जो इम्पोर्टेंट सजेशंस देते हैं, वो लोग इम्पोर्टेंट है. किसी ने ये भी कहा कि प्रीस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट है, किसी ने ये भी कहा कि डॉक्टर्स इम्पोर्टेंट है, while some said the warriors were the most necessary people in the entire kingdom. To the third question about what was the most important occupation, third question king का था, what was the most important occupation? Some replied that the most important thing in the world was science. Of course, किसी ने कहा कि साइंस जो है ये सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग है पूरे दुनिया में, पूरे वर्ल्ड में, बिकॉज साइंस यही आपको क्वेश्चन पूछता है और साइंस ही है ये जो आपको आंसर्स देता है. साइंस ही है जो आपको क्वेश्चन करेगा हमेशा ही. इट विल ऑलवेज क्वेश्चन व्हाई. That is important. Others said it was skill in warfare, and others again that it was a religious worship. The king was convinced by none of the answers and gave the reward to none. Convinced is agreed upon. So king got convinced by none of the answers. Convinced is agreed, but end of the day, none of the answers agreed the king. He decided instead to go to a hermit who was widely renowned for his wisdom. The hermit lived in a small hut in a forest which he never left. He spoke only to common folks. One important thing. The meaning of hermit. Hermit का मतलब है one who is a sage. But अगर हम इसको डिटेल में समझे तो one who is a spiritual sage or a spiritual guru. मतलब ऐसे person है hermit. Rather, hermit is such a person who understands the value of what is right and what is wrong. Hermit ये भी हो सकता है that a person who knows in a spiritual way to be very wise, to be very noble. That person can be called as hermit. The hermit lived in a small hut in a forest which he never left. He spoke only to common folks. Common folks मतलब common people, common man, common women, common men and women. इन्हीं के साथ वो अपने संबंध या रिश्ते बनाते थे. So the king put on simple clothes and approaching the hermit's cell, dismounted his horse. Dismounted मतलब अपने घोड़े पर से उतर गए and left his bodyguards behind him. When the king arrived, the hermit was digging the ground in front of his hut. He greeted the king, but went on digging. What is the meaning of greeted? Greeted का मतलब है welcome. Greeted का मतलब है welcome. The hermit was frail and weak. Frail मतलब feeble. Physically बहुत weak थे. Okay, not that strong enough. And each time he struck the ground with the spade and turned over a little earth, he breathed heavily. Spade मतलब a big pointed thing which is used generally for the farming activities. Okay, तो each time he put one bang, he breathed heavily. इसका यही मतलब है कि बेचारे hermit की उम्र हो चुकी थी. He was very tired, he was aged, और इसीलिए he couldn't bear the actual physical heavy task. The king went up to him and said, I have come to you, wise hermit, to ask you to answer three questions. How can I learn to do the right thing at the right time? Who are the people I most need, and to whom should I therefore pay most attention? The king went up to him and said, I have come to you, wise hermit, to ask you the answer for the three questions. How can I learn to do the right thing at the right time? So again, king is adamant on asking the answers for his questions. ऐसा generally हर बार होता है when we are stuck up to something, when we are stuck onto some answers for the questions, and that fixes our mind very very impatiently. I have come to you, wise hermit, to ask you to answer the three questions. How can I learn to do the right thing and the right time at the right time? Who are the people I most need, and to whom should I therefore pay most attention? And what affairs are the most important and need my attention? What affairs are the most important and need my attention? The hermit listened. The hermit listened to the king but said nothing. He just spat on his hand he just spat on his hand and resumed digging. Resume मतलब restart. उन्होंने अपनी फिर से अपना जो काम कर रहे थे बेचारे वो अपना शुरू कर दिया. He restarted his digging work. The king watched in silence for a while. Then feeling sorry, the king watched in silence for a while. You are tired. Let me take the spade and work a while for you. The hermit silently handed over the spade and sat down on the ground. उन्होंने अपना वो जो weapon था, वो जो kind of a weapon which is used for agricultural activity, वो अपना king के हाथ में दे दिया. When he had dug two beds, the king stopped and repeated the questions. The hermit again gave no answer, but rose, stretched out his hand for the spade, and said, Now rest a while, let me work a bit. But now the king did not give the spade to him and continued to dig. 1 hour passed and another. The sun began to sink behind the trees, and the king at last stuck the spade into the ground and said, I came to you, wise hermit, the wise one, for an answer to my questions. If you can give me none, please say so, and I will go home. Here comes someone running, said the hermit. Let us see who it is. The king turned round and saw a bearded man coming out of the forest. The man held his hands pressed against his stomach, and blood was flowing from under them. When he reached the king, he fainted and fell to the ground, moaning feebly. Moaning matlab he was shouting, he was a bit in pain, he was in extreme pain. So he was moaning feebly. Feebly matlab बहुत weak हुए थे बेचारे. He was moaning, he was like, King, please help me. Someone, please help me. So he was in pain, and out of that pain, he was taking out some weird, feeble noises to show his weakness, to show that he is helpless right now. The king and the hermit unfastened the man's clothing. Unfasten मतलब जो भी उन्होंने कपड़ा वगैरह था वो थोड़ा सा रिमूव करके अपनी वो जो चोट लगी थी आदमी को वो देखने की कोशिश की. There was a large wound in his stomach. The king washed it as well as he could and bandaged it with his handkerchief and a towel the hermit had. But the blood would not stop flowing, and the king again and again removed the bandage, soaked with warm blood, and washed and rebandaged the wound again. When at the last the blood stopped flowing, the man revived. Revived matlab he got back to his senses. Reviving is to get back to senses, or revive. Revive matlab to get back into normal. Thoda matlab maybe the person must have gone into an unconscious mind state. Thoda hosh hawas mein aa gaye. He was like, up I am feeling a bit better. And asked for something to drink. The king brought some fresh water and gave it to him. Meanwhile the sun had set and it had become cool. So the king, with the hermit's help, carried the wounded man into the hut. The man lay there quietly with his closed eyes. By now the king was so tired after his walk and the work he had done that he lay down himself and also fell asleep. When he awoke in the morning, it took him some time to remember where he was and who was a strange bearded man lying by his side and gazing intently at him. तो इसमें भी दो पार्ट सीखेंगे हम लोग. ये जो वर्ड है अवोक, ये कौन सा वर्ड है? Nothing great. It's the word called as awake. It's the present form of the word. Past participle है awoke, and past tense है awoke, and past participle is awaken. That's simple. Now क्या हुआ जब king उठे तो he saw a bearded man, the man who was wounded yesterday and last night was being treated by the king and the hermit. ये man आदमी बेचारा with some intent, with some great intent यहाँ पे with some great attention, eagerness, he was looking at king. Forgive me, said the bearded man in a weak voice. Weak का मतलब है feeble, in a very very low voice. When he saw that the king was awake and was looking at him, I do not know you, and I have nothing to forgive you, said the king. You do not know me, but I know you. I am that enemy of yours who swore to revenge himself on you because you executed his brother and seized his property. मतलब ये आदमी कहता है कि you don't know me, I know that, but I know you, king. I am that person, I am that enemy of yours who swore to revenge himself. मतलब मैंने इसे शपथ ली थी. Swore to revenge is to swear by something. शपथ लेना, revenge ली थी, revenge लेने का. बिकॉज आपने मेरे भाई को किसी आपके पहले वॉर में एग्जीक्यूट करके मार दिया था. मतलब यू हैड कॉट माय ब्रदर एंड यू हैड किल्ड हिम एंड यू हैड सीज्ड ऑल द प्रॉपर्टी. तो ऑफकोर्स मैन ये नहीं कह रहा है कि किंग आप गलत हो, आपने तो अपना ऑब्वियसली राष्ट्र धर्म निभाया था, दिस इज व्हाट इज ट्रू, बट किंग इज नॉट नोन टू दिस फैक्ट. किंग को ये पता ही नहीं है, बट मैन is very smart enough. He is going to take revenge on this king now, and he comes with the same intention to kill the king. But why is it and what happens in between that the man unfortunately gets wounded and he changes his mind, he feels better for the king? क्या हुआ है ये अभी हम आगे देखेंगे. I knew you had gone alone to see the hermit. तो आदमी कहता है मुझे पता था कि आप hermit को देखने आए हैं. And I resolved to kill you on your way back. तो मैंने ऐसा ठान ली थी कि आप जब निकल जाओगे यहाँ से, निकलते वक्त मैं आपको मारूंगा and I will take the revenge of you killing my brother in some of your previous battle. But the day passed and you did not return. So I came back out of my ambush to find you. Ambush matlab hiding place. Your bodyguards recognized me and wounded me. I escaped from them, but would have bled to death had you not dressed my wound. But would have bled to death. मतलब मैं खून में मतलब I would have bled to death. इतना खून मतलब मेरा बह रहा था कि eventually if you wouldn't have helped me, dear king, I would have died. I wished to kill you, but you have saved my life. Now if I live and if you wish it, I'll serve you all my life. तो बेचारा आदमी कहता है कि आपने मेरी जान बचाई है वैसे तो indirectly, though my intention was to kill you, but you saved my life. So I understand that you are not bad at heart. You are not wrong as a person. Just that at that time you had fulfilled your desire as a you have done your duty as a king. तो वही बात है. But now that you helped me, now that you saved my life, I have changed my mind completely. The king was very glad to have made peace with an enemy. Glad, he was happy. Glad का मतलब है happy. And peace, have made peace with an enemy मतलब to be completely with peace, to be completely at ease with an enemy, to be in good friends, in good acquaintance with that enemy, and to have gained him for a friend. He not only forgave him but said he would send his men and his own physician to attend to him. The king then took leave of him. Took leave of him matlab he said, now I leave, I say bye bye. To took leave is to take leave, is to say bye bye. That's a simple thing. And went out of the hut to look for the hermit. Before going away, he wished once more to beg for an answer for the questions he had asked. The hermit was outside on his knees, sowing seeds in the bed that had been dug the day before. The king approached him and said, for the last time, I pray you to answer my questions, wise man. You have already been answered, said the hermit, still crouching on his thin legs and looking up at the king who stood before him. Crouching matlab bending, because that man was so old, so weak. He was trying to somehow stand at his own feet, bend and then come out normal on his own feet. He talked to the king. What do you mean? Asked the king. Do you not see? Replied the hermit. If you would have not pitied my weakness yesterday and stayed to dig these beds for me, you would have gone back and been killed by that man. मतलब एक्चुअली में किंग आपने मैंने आपके आंसर्स का जवाब, क्वेश्चंस का जवाब नहीं दिया इसलिए नहीं आप रुके, लेकिन पहली दफ़ा तो किंग आप रुके बिकॉज यू हैड पिटी ऑन मी. आपको ऐसा लगा कि ये बेचारा मैं इतना ओल्ड हूँ, मैं इतना वीक हूँ, मैं इतना फीबल हूँ, तो मुझे थोड़ी मदद करेगा, मैं ऐसा आपको लगा था इसलिए यू वेटेड. एंड बिकॉज यू वेटेड दैट वॉज गुड. इफ यू वुड हैव गॉन and that person would have returned on his way and he would have killed you. So the most important time was when you were digging the beds, and I was the most important man to do me good was your most important business. Afterwards, the most important time was when you were attending to that man. For if you had not bound his wounds, he would have died without having made peace with you. That's what. So what is the most important time? The time when you helped that man. The time when you helped that man. So the most important time when I was digging the beds and you helped me, dear king, he would have died without having made peace with you. So he was the most important man, and what you did for him was the most important business. Remember then, there is only one time that is important, and that is now. Aaj. संत कबीर जी ने कहा था, कल करे सो आज कर, आज करे सो आप. So now is the time to do the best. It is the most important time because it's the only time when we have any power. The most necessary person is the one with whom you are, for you do not know whether you will ever have dealings with anyone else, and the most important thing to do is this person good, because for that person alone were you sent into this life. मतलब ऐसा है कि you never know. You might have any time coming up as the best time for you. You don't know when the time will be, but you make yourself available. That is the best time for you. जिसको आप मदद करते हो, that's the most important person. इसी से आपकी जिंदगी की पहचान बनती है. So that's what the wise hermit gave the most important lessons to the king. Rather, king got his answers on his own. He did not have to ask anyone, and nobody answered him directly. He was the one who answered on his own and happily got his answers. So what happens is हमारी जिंदगी में भी यही होता है. We keep on searching for answers, but we don't have to search for the answers. We simply get our answers wherever possible. We simply get our answers through our regular deeds. अलग की तरह आंसर ढूंढने की जरूरत नहीं है. It's simply that we need to see and observe where are exactly we getting our learning lessons, and that's why life itself is a learning curve. Observe, understand, and then implement. Thank you so much. Now, activity-based questions. We'll go one by one, students. Read the following questions, read the following story, and answer whether the following statements are true or false. The people convinced the king to make a proclamation. False. It was not the people who convinced the king, but it was the king who told, rather the king who proclaimed itself that I will make this proclamation. The hermit spoke usually to everyone. No, the hermit spoke only to common folks. The king received all answers from the hermit. The king received all answers from the hermit. No, the hermit did not answer. Rather, the situation itself made a king get his answers back. The person the king saved and helped was his enemy. True. To do good to people is the purpose of our life. Absolutely true. Now, match the columns. So, students, I purposely have, you can see this, I have worked up for everybody of us. Match the titles and contents of the proper paragraph. क्या दिया है? एक ए कॉलम में, मतलब पहले कॉलम में एक पैराग्राफ दिया, उसका एग्जैक्ट कंटेंट बी कॉलम में, उसका रिलेटेड कंटेंट बी कॉलम में है. Once a certain king क्या है? क्या किया उन्होंने? अनाउंसमेंट की. That is, he made a proclamation. You know very well, everybody. The certain king made a proclamation. Many learned people gave various answers to the king. Equally weighted dash gave the reward to everyone. Equally weighted का क्या है? Questions remain unanswered. When the king arrived, that ... my first attention. When the king arrived, the king meets the hermit. The hermit listened ... continued to dig. King helps the hermit. The king turned round dash ... gave it to him. Okay, the wounded stranger. Meanwhile, the son ... said the king. Seventh one का क्या है? The stranger begs for pardon. You do not know ... all my life. Stranger's vicious intentions. मतलब stranger क्या है यहाँ पे? Vicious intention यही है कि he is trying to, or he is willing to, all his life to take revenge on this king who has killed his brother in his previous battles. The king was very glad the day before, okay, because he got a new friend in his life. And do you not see sent into jail? Do you not see sent into jail? That the hermit points out answers. That's simple. I mean, that's related to it very simply. Now, the character traits of the king and the hermit are mixed up. Character traits मतलब behavioral patterns, एक दूसरे के स्वभाव. Sort them out in the right box. King obviously is impatient a bit. He's eager to succeed. He's convincing. Hermit कैसा है? Enlightened है. He's feeble. He's helpful. Agreed. Even the king case में आएगा helpful, very sure. At the same time, hermit is patient and hermit is wise hermit as well. Further, complete the tree diagrams associated with the happenings of the story. Which was the most important time? Reward winning question. सबसे पहले, which was the most important time? Who were the most necessary people and who were? I mean, इसके लिए रेफर करना है तो जरूर रेफर कर सकते हैं, ठीक है? The three questions, okay. He would never fail anything. He would undertake, and above all, if he always knew what was the most undertake. Questions क्या थे? What was the right time for every action? Who the most necessary people were, and how he might know the most important thing to do, and how he might know the most important thing to do. Know the most important people. Different responses. पहले तो उन्होंने लास्ट में the impossible for one man to decide correctly the right time for every action. Some people different responses to the first question. पहले क्वेश्चन के responses क्या क्या आए थे वो चेक करते हैं. So many learned people came to the court, but they all had to give different answers. In reply to the first question, some said, to know the right time for every action, one must draw up in advance a table of days, months, and years, and must live strictly according to it. ये सबसे पहला था. दूसरा, others declared that it was impossible to decide beforehand the right time for every action, but not. Yet others said it was impossible for one man to decide correctly the right time for every action, and wise king should instead have a council of wise people who would do it. Very simple, everyone. Okay, let's go further. Most necessary people needed by the king. बहुत सारे आंसर्स मिले थे. Some said it is his counselors. Some said it is the priests. Some said it is the doctors. Some said it is the soldiers. Simple. Most important occupations. Some said it is. We'll learn for that as well. The third question का जो answers थे. Okay, activity based questions, and we will make sure we take a bit of more time and then go for it. What was the most important occupation? Some replied that the most important occupation was thing in the world was science. Others said it was warfare. Some said it was religious worship, and some also convinced the king. But of course, the king got convinced by nobody. So again, three most important occupations. Some said science. Number second, some said warfare, and some also said it is religious worship. Write down in your notebook 2 points for each of the following. How do you know? The learned advisors who came to the court confused the king. The learned advisors who came to the court confused the king. क्या दिया है? Of course, because he was convinced by none of the answers. Some said that it is the counselors who are important. Some said it is the soldiers who are important. Some said it is the doctors who are important. So he confused the king. The king was humble because he obviously could see that hermit was tired, he was weak, so he constantly went to hermit and said, let me have the spade and start doing the job for you. You please sit down, sir. The king's enemy was repentant, yes, because the king had helped him. And in spite of knowing that he was his enemy, first initially the king helped the person because he was absolutely in dire pain. तो क्योंकि वो बेचारा एनिमी जो था वो बहुत दुख में था, वो बहुत दर्द में था, तो obviously the king went up to him and helped him without anything else. The hermit was truly wise because the hermit did not give the direct answer to the king. Please note everybody, hermit ने direct answer नहीं दिया king को. hermit ने answer देने की जरूरत ही नहीं पड़ी. hermit ने क्या किया? Straight away बोल दिया कि this is what you have observed. आपको सभी answers आपने ही मिले थे. You yourself have got all the answers. I don't have anything to explain. So the most important time is now. Most important people is the one whom you help, and the most important thing to do is service to the mankind. Clear? Further, choose the correct answers and fill the blanks. Varied paragraph 3 means unnecessary, unequal, unimportant. चेक करते हैं. Of course we know it, but हम लोग एक बार करेंगे. Paragraph 3 कौन सा है? This is paragraph 1, this is paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. Equally varied were the answers to the second question. Varied तो obviously varied का मतलब equally different were the answers to the same question. Many learned people came to the court and gave the same answers, correct answers, different answers, wrong answers, different answers. The synonym of convinced, persuaded, happy, unhappy, angry, persuaded. The king wanted to know dash time to begin everything, right time to begin everything. I pray you to answer my question. Your pray means I request, or plead to God, request, order, suggest, I request you. Choose an adverb that collocates with breathed. Choose an adverb that collocates with breathed. He breathed hurriedly, heavily, hardly, calmly. नहीं, heavily. Simple. So यहाँ पे हमने देखा है that the hermit was breathing heavily, which means he was trying to have a bit of a heaviness in his breath. Next one, everyone. Yeah, consider the list of different things happen. Arrange them in the read the related paragraph again if you are uncertain. We have to arrange them in the correct order, them in order of time. So सबसे पहले कौन सा हुआ? The king's body recognized and wounded the bearded man. The bearded man laid an ambush to kill the king. The king spent the night at the hermit's hut. Yeah, so the first one is the king executed the bearded man's brother. सबसे पहले ये हुआ था. दूसरा, the bearded man resolved to kill the king. दूसरा था. Okay. After this, the king went alone to see the hermit. Okay. Then the bearded man laid an ambush to kill the king. Number 4. Number 5, the bearded man came out of the ambush. Number 6, the king's bodyguards recognized and wounded the bearded man. And number 7, the king spent the entire night at the hermit's hut. Next one. So nothing much in this questions as well. From the story, find the collocations of the following. Dash important. Okay, so हम लोग story एक बार पढ़ेंगे and then we can go for it. So let's go with the story part of it. Okay, now the collocations from the story. Dash important, most important, frail and weak, right time, simple clothes, fell asleep, gazing intently, widely renowned, red blood, or it can also be called as pure blood, eyes closed, dash made peace. Okay, dash pieces made peace. Now say whether the verbs underlying the sentence are finite, limited by the number or parts of the subject, non-finite, not governed by the subject. Here decides to go. So decides is finite, to go is non-finite. I have come is finite, he gave is again finite. The hermit was digging the ground is finite. I pray you to answer. Finite is non-finite. Forgive me, finite. The sun began to sing. Finite and non-finite. To sing is non-finite. Whichever requires an object to be made is non-finite. Narrate an experience of your own that has helped you to realize that patience is bitter but its fruit is sweet. It's a personal response question. Obviously, बहुत बार ऐसा होता है that we realize that I wish I would have been patient. So every story in your own life can be different. Everyone can have their own stories of learning a good lesson that patience is bitter but its fruit is sweet. So definitely dialogue based questions हमें नहीं है, तो we won't be discussing them because dialogue itself has been completely taken off from the questions. Okay, everybody. Now that's here our chapter is over along with the activity based questions. That's it.